prayed for something and felt like God said no, or like He ignored you? Maybe it was a job opportunity, healing for a loved one, or a dream that you poured your heart into. As Christians, we believe in a loving God who hears our prayers, but sometimes the answer isn't what we expect. When God says no, or nothing at all, it can be confusing or even painful. But what does it mean? And how should we respond? In this video, we're going to explore what it means when you don't get what you think you want from God, why that happens, and how we should trust Him through our difficult moments. One of the most common questions people ask is, why does God say no to my prayers? It's important to remember that God's ways are higher than our ways. As finite beings, we can't always see the bigger picture that God is orchestrating. Sometimes He says no because He sees dangers that we don't see, or He's simply preparing us for something greater down the road. Other times, God might say no because He's testing our faith and building our character. Consider the example of Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7 to 9. Paul pleaded with God to remove his thorn in the flesh, but God's response was, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." So Paul didn't get the answer he wanted, but through God's denial, he experienced greater grace and strength. God's no is often rooted in His love and understanding of what we truly need. He's not denying our desires just to be cruel, but instead He does that to guide us towards a higher purpose, one that aligns with His eternal plan for us. Another question you might ask is, how do I know if God is saying no or He's just telling me to wait? It can be hard to distinguish between a rejection and a delay, because sometimes God's silence doesn't mean no. It just means wait. I think in these moments, patience is key. But we are called to keep praying, keep seeking, and most importantly, keep trusting. But there are a few signs that can help us understand the difference. When God says no, there might be a sense of finality or peace, even in disappointment. However, when He asks us to wait, we might feel a quiet prompting to keep faithfully moving forward, even when the answer is taking a while to surface. The waiting period is often a time for spiritual growth and preparation. Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 reminds us, "But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." If you feel led to continue in prayer and preparation, God might be asking you to wait for His perfect timing. Now let's address another important question. What should you do when God says no to something you really want? When we feel disappointed by God's rejection of our desires, our response should be one of faith, not frustration. It's natural to feel hurt, like something important has been lost. But instead of turning away from God, we should turn towards Him. Trusting His wisdom means believing that He knows what's best for us, even when we don't understand it. In times like this, we should turn to Scripture and prayer for strength and guidance. Romans chapter 8 verse 28 assures us that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. So even in the no, I think God is working for your good. So when God says no to something you deeply desire, remember that He might be redirecting you towards something even better, or maybe shielding you from evil you can't see or understand. I want to share a personal story with you about a time when God gave me a blessed no, even though I didn't understand it at the time. It was 2022 and I had set my heart on a job at a successful local video production company. I thought it was the perfect opportunity, something I had been dreaming of for a long time. I worked hard to get an interview with them, and when I finally did, I was beyond excited. I felt like that was it. My life was sorted, because everything seemed to be falling into place. But then on the day before the interview, disaster! I was just out running a simple errand, just walking to the shop and back, when suddenly, as I was nearing my apartment, I somehow twisted my ankle in such a way that I couldn't even walk. I managed to hop on one foot the rest of the way home. I was terrified as my whole leg started swelling, as I had never seen before. I was so scared that I immediately called an ambulance. When the paramedics arrived, they told me it wasn't broken, but I needed to stay home and rest for at least a month for it to heal. At that moment, I wasn't even crying for the pain. I was crying because I had to cancel my interview. I couldn't believe what was happening. I called the company hoping I could reschedule, but they told me they needed to hire someone right away. So it was a hard no. I felt devastated, like the sky was falling down. I couldn't understand why this had happened. Did God didn't want me to work? Why would God deny me my big opportunity when I was so close? I was angry and confused. It really felt like he had slammed the door in my face. After a few days though, I decided I needed to move on. So I told myself, okay, let's see if there's something else out there for me. And as you probably could guess, that's when something amazing happened. Just a few days later, I stumbled across a job posting for a marketing agency in Romania looking for a video editor. The description of the role felt like it had been written for me. It just felt extremely right. But I didn't want to get excited anymore because I was like, if this doesn't go well either, I'm gonna be really upset. So I applied, went through the long interviewing process, and got the job. I couldn't believe it. The people I worked with were exactly my type of people. I was working in a creative environment that allowed me to fully explore my potential. Soon after I started working with them, I realized why God said no to that first job. At the missed job opportunity, I wouldn't have been able to grow and express my creativity as I did at the marketing agency. They already had in place fixed systems that don't include creativity. You just have to be a little robot doing things, which I kind of like, but not all the time, you know. I think I'm more creative than technical. Yeah. Looking back now, it's so clear. God had a better plan. He didn't let me have the first job because he had something greater waiting for me. Something that truly matched who I am and what I was meant to do. Have you ever had a brutal no from God? I would love to hear your stories. Please share them with me. So what can we learn from God's no? Sometimes God's no is His way of teaching us deeper lessons, like patience, endurance, humility, you name it. By closing a door, He might be protecting us from unforeseen dangers or redirecting us towards a better path we hadn't considered. Think of the Israelites in the wilderness. Initially, God refused their entry to the Promised Land, not because He was withholding a blessing, but because they weren't ready. They needed time to fully trust Him and learn the lessons necessary for the journey ahead. When we embrace God's no, it can become an opportunity for spiritual growth. It's in those moments that we start to understand His will more clearly and realize that His plan is always better than our own, even when it doesn't seem that way at first. I've been in that position so many times. And now, instead of being discouraged when God says no, I just get super excited. I find myself asking, okay God, so what better thing you have in store for me? As a Seventh-day Adventist, I observe the Sabbath as a time to rest and reconnect with God. When life doesn't go as planned and I hear a no from God, the Sabbath can be a source of renewal and reflection. It gives me time to lay my burdens at His feet, rest in His promises, and recalibrate my focus on His eternal plan for me. The Sabbath reminds me that God is in control, not me. It's a weekly reminder that I can trust Him. mainly when I have more questions than answers. So when God says no, it's not because He doesn't care or He's punishing us. In fact, I think it's exactly the opposite. His denial is often a sign of His great love and wisdom. Remember, His ultimate goal is to bring us into a closer relationship with Him. And sometimes a no is the best way to guide us to the right path. So if you're struggling with God's no today, know this. He sees you, He loves you, and He's working everything out for your good, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. Trust Him, lean on Him, and hold on to His promises.